All right, we are live. Thank you guys so much for your patience. Benjamin David here from Above and Batman Beyond, and welcome to our Batman Soul the Dragon review. So we were supposed to go live at 10, so thank you guys once again for your patience there. But yeah, man, welcome to the DC Animated Movie Show, a YouTube series and podcast for the prestigious ongoing catalog of DC animated movies. I am your host, Benjamin David. Tonight we are live on your YouTube channel, Above and Batman Beyond, like I said. As you can tell, I'm reading some of this. And the audio from tonight's episode will also be from our DC Animated Movie Show podcast. So be sure to subscribe to both. So tonight we review the newest of DC animated movies, and that is Batman Soul the Dragon. Soul dropped just last week, January 26th on Blu-ray with a digital release on 1/12. So as you're about to hear, this super groovy 70s Bat movie has been a pure joy for me to cover, both in my previous coverage here on the channel, as well as tonight's review. Since we are live here on YouTube, if you're joining us in chat, please feel free to drop in some Q's and some A's, your own thoughts on Soul the Dragon, and some other questions or comments on DC animated movies altogether. As always, we love to hear what you guys think as much as we love to hear Benjamin talk. At first, we were going to do a full-on edited video version of our Soul review, but then we thought, why not go live? See what you guys think as well. And actually, the live videos have been getting a lot more views overall, so why not give people what they want? Within reason. So since we are live, I'm going to be reading the exact review I wrote for the original video. When I wrote this intro, I thought I was going to be able to write the whole review. That's not entirely true. I'm going to read like the detailed stuff from the beginning, and then after that, switch to a little more of a free ball type thing. But I do have a bunch of notes, obviously. So yeah, let me get back to my spot. Like I was saying, I will do my best to not sound like I'm just reading off my monitor, even though I am right now. And since we may get some people to join us on chat, feel free to drop a question or comment anytime. We'll add some live discussion to the review. So before we jump into it, if you're new here at the channel, please consider subscribing on YouTube. Click that notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. And speaking of that trusty notification bell, be sure to click on it so you know when we're live. If you like our live episodes, it tells you when we go live. And for the podcast listeners, please subscribe to the pod. Just like the vid series, we are DC Animated Movie Show. You can find that podcast on Spotify, Anchor, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, this particular episode is available in both video and audio form. So you get to pick your poison for today's show, your Cobra poison. Oh, just thought of that one. But again, please subscribe to both since there's plenty of YouTube stuff you're obviously not going to find on the podcast and vice versa. And finally, follow us on Instagram, some social medias. We are at DC Animated Movie Show on Instagram, and follow the YouTube channel as well. We are at Batman Beyond Media. All right, guys, so let's roll back the clocks to the swingin' Bat 70s for tonight's review of Batman Soul the Dragon. How was my intro? How am I doing? Anybody in chat? Not yet. That's okay. We do have 2 people there. That's good. Nice. Oh, 3 thumbs up. Look at us. Look at us. So popular. It's so cute, even though we've been doing this for like 6-7 months, but we're still a bit in the infancy compared to our, counterparts like, the DCAU Watchtower and some of the bigger YouTubers. But I am so happy with our audience. I love you guys so much. So here is my review again. The first part, I am going to kind of read word for word. It is the more detailed stuff, production details, and also just the stuff I thought I might forget. But then after that, I'll switch to a more kind of free ball version. So, even if this movie was bad, I would have such a bias toward the genre mashup that the following review would likely be skewed. Let me start that over again since I have neighbors in the hallway that have distracted me. All right, so even if this movie was bad, I would have such a bias toward the genre mashup that the following review would likely be skewed. Then again, Under the Red Hood has remained in my DC animated movie top 2 for years now, and all you have to do is watch the first 30 seconds of my Death in the Family review here on the channel to see I'm pretty okay with being objective when necessary. Oh God, that movie. So before we begin, please be warned, this is a spoiler review. So if you haven't watched Soul of the Dragon, then please pause this video, watch the flick, and come on back. So, as it reads on my very own, check this out, baby, for the YouTube watchers, limited edition Best Buy exclusive Soul of the Dragon gift set here. Not 1, but 2, because the more soul, the better. This one's for my co-host and good friend Eli Benson, but I do love seeing 2, and I might get a second one just to keep it in box. So as it reads, On this gift set in the midst of the swingin' 1970s, this elseworld in bold, reminding you it's an elseworld, adventure finds Bruce Wayne training under a master sensei. It is here that Bruce, along with other elite students, is forged in the fire of martial arts discipline, and the lifelong bonds they form will be put to the test when a deadly menace arises from their past. It will take the combined efforts of Batman and world-renowned martial artists Richard Dragon, Ben Turner, and Lady Shiva to battle the monsters of the world and get ready and beyond. Anytime the word beyond is muttered, got to do it. Maybe not. So yeah, man, check out this. If you guys have the digital version or if you have the regular Blu-ray, just so you know, Best Buy has this exclusive Batman Soul of the Dragon. Again, only at Best Buy, and it's got a Ben Turner exclusive figure. This baby's dope. I love that it's Ben Turner / Bronze Tiger and not the more obvious Batman. Which, to be fair, the DC animated movies, WB Animation is pretty good at kind of not just putting the popular ones in there. Here's a cool name, Koos Magoose. What up? Sweet hoodie. Where can I get that one? You can get this one, in fact. Thank you for the free ad here. I wasn't going to do ads on the YouTube channel for quite a while, but on the podcast, we did it for a bit. But yeah, the link on our Instagram, at Batman Beyond Media, if you go in there, that's our link tree. And you can find this baby's in large. Got this extra large. I think there's XX on there. It is certainly hoodie weather around these parts. It is cold as hell out there, and it's in fact a snowstorm today. Which, once again, thank you for your patience, not only being a little late tonight, but last night we were supposed to go live every Sunday, as we do every Sunday, or our videos every Sunday. But sorry, so because of the snowstorm, my internet was absolutely terrible. I got all these messages from Optimum, my cable provider, and then. But yeah, thank you for your patience on that. And Koos Bagoose, you can get it at Batman Beyond Media. For the audio listeners, it's the classic Batman Beyond symbol emblazoned across my chest proudly in a black hoodie. I get this compliment. It's funny how not only in public, every time we go out, my co-host, again, a close friend, Eli Benson, follow him at Batman_Beyond_fan page on Instagram. And he and I, every time we are out after recording or doing videos or whatever, I invariably get a compliment on this hoodie. So it's funny that even online, instead of asking me about Soul of the Dragon, you ask me about my hoodie. That's totally cool. We have a Batman Beyond show here as well. So I did just read the synopsis off my, and also speaking of the special edition on the Blu-ray, or the limited edition, this baby is 0288 of 8,000. So only 8,000 of these bad boys were made. So definitely pick one up if you like it. Eli, you tell me, which one do you want? There's 0288 or 3182. You get to pick, because I love you that much. Eli does so much for the channel. I'm gonna miss him so much when I move to Florida. Sad face. All right, so back to the review, baby. So some other production details. Soul of the Dragon is directed by Sam Liu, who directs a lot of the DC animated movies. Written by Jeremy Adams, who is our boy. I'm going to talk about him in detail in a little bit. Executive produced by none other than Bruce Timm. And our ensemble is voiced by David Giuntoli as Batman Bruce Wayne. Kelly Hu is Lady Shiva, who's fantastic, really funny. Michael Jai White, Gamble himself from The Dark Knight, as Ben Turner, Bronze Tiger. David Carrasco as Richard Dragon, Kung Fu Fighter. His delivery is amazing throughout. And finally, Sensei. We have, for Sensei, I should say, we have Lopan legend himself, James Hong from Big Trouble, Little China. Sensei, baby. I should say, this is Lopan from Big Trouble. I had this years before Soul came out, but yeah, Big Trouble has always been a favorite of mine. When I saw it as a kid, like, I'll never forget, my mom and my brother introduced me to that movie, and ever since I've been obsessed. Our way in back in the 90s was, of course, through Mortal Kombat, which, holy shit, full circle here. Jeremy Adams wrote the Mortal Kombat movie, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here in the review, but a lot of the guys in the bad guys and the people like the followers, the dark magic, Asian American sorcery followers of Lopan here, played once again by James Hong. They all wore like Raiden hats, like the big straw kind of iconic Asian Raiden hats. So, and they shot electricity. So if you know your MK, you know that all those characters are based on like movie characters and shit. So pretty dope. So yeah, man. And we'll get to Big Trouble because it directly also relates to Soul of the Dragon. But yeah, this movie is everything. It's a 70s kung fu movie. It's a 70s world-traveling spy movie. It's a blaxploitation movie. It's even, once again, a Big Trouble in Little China movie. Less so the latter, but a fun peppering of, once again, Asian American Big Trouble sorcery is in there too. And that's according to Soul screenwriter Jeremy Adams, who, starting off this review, is now one of my favorite writers in existence. If you follow our DC animated movie show here on the channel, it's literally self-titled How Much I Adore DCAMs. Pretty obvious. But for a while there, as recent as August 2020, in fact, we were still living in a DCAMU state of mind. For 7 years, 14 films, we've been living in the DC animated movie universe, often referred to as the Tuckerverse, after director-producer James Tucker, who also worked on Batman Beyond, or the DCAMU, it's also sometimes referred to as. And while that particular New 52-based universe had its moments, I'm admittedly more relieved than anything that it's over. I mean, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War was incredible. That finale to that, I couldn't believe they put a finale to a universe that, once again, I was kind of whatever about. Damn, that finale was good, and that movie's incredible. You got to watch it. Again, JL Dark Apocalypse War. I believe also directed by Soul of the Dragon's director, Sam Liu. But again, I'm admittedly more relieved than anything, at least, that it's over. I know this is something I've talked about. I know I've talked about the DCAMU several times over the last few months, but I bring it up here because it seems the brilliant Jeremy Adams is now that we're out of the DCAMU, DC Animation's new point man for the next batch of flicks. So I say that because Adams wrote Soul of the Dragon. He wrote the next DCAM for 2021, which is going to be Justice Society World War II, which, if you haven't seen the featurette of that or the previews of that, I think, the trailer of that is online now. And if you've seen Soul of the Dragon, it should be in your special features. Even if you have the digital, it should be in there. And there's a whole featurette of that. But yeah, Jeremy Adams wrote that. He wrote Soul of the Dragon, and he wrote, this is what I was talking about before, the WB Animation Mortal Kombat movie, Scorpion's Revenge. So before getting into Soul tonight, I want to talk about the MK movie for a second, since it does directly relate to SOTD. So Scorpion's Revenge is the title of it. Once again, it dropped early 2020. And even for a pretty hardcore WB cartoon follower like myself, this one snuck up on me. I caught the trailer for it, I think, on the JL Dark Apocalypse War special features. Don't hold me to that, but I think that's where I caught it. Didn't see trailers of it, and granted, I didn't quite have the DC Animated Movie Show at that point, so maybe I wasn't following as close. But still, man, it was like, this thing came out of friggin' nowhere. And holy shit, did this movie blow me away. And what blew me away most about it was how low my expectations were going in. I mean, the trailer looked great. Mortal Kombat's clearly beloved IP. Again, it is a WB Animation joint. So I certainly didn't doubt the animation or action quality, but it was actually the writing I was most impressed with in a Mortal Kombat cartoon movie. And as you can imagine from our, once again, limited edition, can't help but showing this bad boy off, Blu-ray Soul synopsis, the dark magic and kung fu sorcery of Mortal Kombat was a solid resume builder for a boy, Jeremy Adams, for Soul of the Dragon. Again, Soul is a brand new Elseworld, which makes the script a completely original story. Conceived in its earliest phases by exec producer Bruce Timm, this was a through and through passion project by Bruce Timm. Sorry, I lost my spot there. Sorry, this was a through and through passion project for the godfather of the DCAU. So if you want to hear some more behind the scenes about Soul's genesis, then we have two vids here on the channel for you guys to check out. One's of the 2021 DCAM slate, including production details on Soul, as well as our vid titled, Cobra, Soul of the Dragon v Cobra Beyond. That was a crossover ep with our Above and Batman Beyond vid series, comparing the 70s villain of Cobra in Soul to the futurized Cobra of Batman Beyond. And the podcast version of that is also available here on the same podcast feed, DC Animated Movie Show. So back to the review. Sticking with Bruce Timm for a minute, as we talked about in all of our Soul vids thus far, this groovy 70s Batman is animated in the same iconic Bruce Timm style, found in the DCAU. And speaking of Beyond specifically, young Bruce Wayne in this origin flick has striking design similarities to Epilogue era Terry McGinnis from Batman Beyond. So for those unfamiliar with Epilogue, if you haven't seen Epilogue, this was the famous yet admittedly controversial episode of Justice League Unlimited, the one that tied up some of the big loose ends of Batman Beyond. The older Terry we see in Epilogue looks a lot like young Bruce we met in Soul, which is pretty cool. Get a drink of water here real quick. See what people are saying in chat. You guys chatting it up? It's all right. Damn, 5 thumbs up. What up, everybody? All right, so this brings us to animation, because we just talked about, the animation in Batman Beyond compared to this. So animation in this movie was phenomenal. Not a huge surprise considering Bruce Timm's been animating Batman going on 30 years next year. And if that doesn't make you feel old, but yeah, a true master at work. Still, even being the sucker of the Timmverse I am, again, I try to be objective as possible when it comes to my reviews here on the channel. Nevertheless, the animation in this was even better than I expected. I do have my one of my typical DCAM criticisms that I'll get into in a minute, but sticking with the DCAU style, this here Soul project was an interesting one. I say interesting because it's yet another Elseworld project from what I like to call the Timm multiverse, or the Tumultiverse. So we talked about the Tumultiverse last time we went live here on the channel, covering the beyond exciting rumor that Batman the Animated Series may be getting a reboot sequel series on HBO Max. So what the hell do I mean by the Tumultiverse? It means that Bruce Timm has been pretty hands-on for a lot of the DC animated movies for years now, yet most of them don't take place in the DCAU, nor do they share his DCAU style. Yet most of them are, however, you do have a handful that, while they may not take place directly in the DCAU, they do share the DCAU style. So you got Justice League Gods and Monsters, for example. You got this is impossible to say, the DC Showcase short, Phantom Stranger, and for today's review, Batman Soul the Dragon. So I just love watching yet another very fresh and different take on DC animated characters, yet they all look like they could walk through a boom tube and fit right into an episode of Batman Beyond. So here's your trippy question next time you spark up some 70s grass, man. Will they ever cross over and meet each other? And now you can sober up, because that's probably never going to happen. I meant to go, and now you can sober up. That was the intended delivery, guys. And now you can sober up, because that's probably never going to happen. But as my real-life hippie father would say, that'd be far out, man. Actually, his voice would be, that'd be far out, man. What up, chat? What up, chat? Now, another thing I loved about the animation, and then we'll get to one animation criticisms, like I said, it's a kung fu flick, right? So hand-to-hand fighting damn well better be strong. And good, lordy lord, is it good. Kung fu fighting really felt like kung fu fighting, meaning you almost forget you're watching a Batman cartoon because it feels exactly like a 70s kung fu movie. And this may get me crucified in the classic live-action 70s community, but I kind of don't care here. I'm a child of the 90s, so here goes. I personally found this to be more enjoyable to watch than some of the classic 70s kung fu flicks, since they're, from the 70s. So all the credit in the world to the brilliant, groundbreaking Shaw Brothers, Bruce Lee, and other kung fu film pioneers of the time. But fighting in movies back then had its limits. Martial arts choreography and effects now are so impressive that it pretty much feels like you too are being expertly kicked in the face, right? It's like you watch these movies and you're like ducking and shit. Still, most of the modern ones are just that. They're modern. So they're not really throwback flicks to the 70s in the way Soul of the Dragon was. So in a way, this was an even better 70s kung fu movie than a lot of the 70s kung fu movies. Again, controversial, I realize. Tear my head off online, I don't really care. But for me personally, this movie has a lot more rewatch value than some of the classics. And I'm honestly not just saying that because of my predisposition to Batman animation. Again, now I'm interested to hear what a Shaw Brothers purist would say to such cinematic blasphemy. And credit where credit's due to the recent batch of DCAMs, the DCAMU included. I saw an interview with Jay Oliva years ago, who's directed a whole bunch of the DCAMs, including Dark Knight Returns. He did Batman Bad Blood, which I went to the premiere of, very proud of that. And he was also on that panel. I got to kind of meet him, talk to him, ask him a question. Throne of Atlantis he directed. He's been a storyboard artist on a bunch of this stuff as well. And so Oliva admitted how much he loved the fighting and action from the old school Batman the Animated Series. I mean, who the hell doesn't? And other DCAU shows. But he also admitted that those shows didn't, and I never thought of this really before. He also admitted that those shows didn't exactly have full-on martial arts fighting, which again is an interesting point that I never thought of until he said that, but it's completely true. Again, great action throughout the DCAU, no one's denying that, but not to take anything away from it, but the DCAMU and other DCAMs really did step it up when it came to martial arts action. So for a full-on martial arts origin for Batman and Soul of the Dragon, forget it. The fighting in this movie felt just like a martial arts movie, let alone the 70s kung fu fighting throughout. And one of the Soul of the Dragon special features, there's a great behind-the-scenes look at the Foley work, specifically for the fighting. So Foley work, for those unfamiliar, it's simply the sound that things make in a movie. In this case, the sound of fist meeting face or foot meeting face. And if you know your 70s kung fu, the over-the-top sound effects of whoosh, 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 like just, you know, and then what is the other one? Like ching, ching, like of the swords and shit. So these are over-the-top sound effects, and you know, but these things are the Foley work is kind of the most distinctive features of those flicks. And again, Bruce Timm was super hands-on for this movie and said that while he did want some of that charming 70s fighting Foley work, he also toned it down a bit to make it feel a bit more modern and realistic. It's details like this that just keep reinforcing the genius of Bruce Timm. Now, let's get to one of my criticisms of animation in this movie, and it's with the vehicles. Let me check out chat real quick. All right, we're still young. No worries. Not too worried about chat these days. So again, vehicles, and this is beating a dead horse at this point. I think I might just omit this from my DCAM reviews for a while, but the one reason I don't is because I did see a counterexample that kind of proves that they can do vehicles really well in DC animated movies. So back to my criticisms, and again, this is with a lot of them. The vehicles, for whatever reason, they look digitally super, like it looks too much like 3D animation. Now, Soul of the Dragon, I will say, has a much, it's less guilty of this. It looks less superimposed. They look less out of place, the vehicles. But it still just had a bit of that feel with the motion and kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't fit nearly. Whereas like the old DCAU stuff was seamless. Like those vehicles were incredible. Granted, once again, they weren't assembled digitally. That was, you know, hand-drawn animation. And then even when they switched over digitally halfway through, I think season 2 it was, with the Egg Baby episode of all things from Batman Beyond, it was still kind of like, you know, so close to the old school animation that they were able to make it seamless however they did it. Now a lot of them, I mean, even including Under the Red Hood, which is another one that's less guilty of it, but I think that's, I bring that up because it feels like that's when that kind of started, of the vehicles just being weird looking. But I will say, and this brings me to a transition to the next part, the vehicle design in this, and this is one of the things that Bruce Timm talks about in the, what was the name of the featurette? And we're going to talk about the featurettes after this. Jim Krieg's Far Out highlights, man. So Bruce Timm talks about, he's like, there's no better era of cars than the early 70s muscle cars. And I have to agree. So I haven't posted this to Instagram yet. My first car, this is how old I am. Granted, it was a very old car for when I was in high school, but pulling up to high school senior year, what would that have been? 2002, I would have gotten my license. I graduated in 03. Was my 77 lime green Buick LeSabre, baby. Oh yeah, bench seats. I used to fit like 10 people in that car comfortably. This thing was green on green, lime green exterior on lime green vinyl interior. It had a face clock, radio. It didn't even have a tape deck because they didn't exist, I don't think, in 77. At that point, the only like player you would have is beside the radio is an 8-track. There was no 8-track player in it. It smelled musky. It smelled of the 70s. That car, I sold that thing for a like 96 Jeep Grand Cherokee at 18. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go on a camping trip, so I need all-wheel drive. Oh, stupid kid. Kids are so dumb. I love kids. I used to teach. The youth is great. Don't take that sound bite. That sounds wrong. But like young people are great, but damn, they're stupid sometimes. And that was a big regret, was selling. We used to call it the green machine. Oh man, I missed the hell out of that car. But yeah, my shit aside here, the cars of the 70s gorgeous, and they are the Batmobile in this. So again, this is like an origin story for Batman. So it's like not quite the Batmobile, but it's got all the gadgets that like I said before, a traveling spy movie. So very much like a James Bond. So this is very much like Batman meets James Bond, this movie. Oh my God. When he, what do you got? The rocket power thing. So he does a huge jump. He's got the tacks that he puts out the back, oil slicks, I think. Just so much cool shit. The ejector seat, of course, was Lady Shiva uses against Bruce's will. His car is fucking perfect. So I love that Bruce Timm did that. And then again, so this brings us, like I said, to the next part, which is the 70s of it all. And the cars, the music, the clothes, the Tarantino feel to it, the blaxploitation feel to it. Bruce Timm said that this was an interesting thing that I never thought of. He said that in a lot of, he said personally, like with film, he thinks that films that like standard live action film, the ones that don't overdo the music, he feels are the strongest, because he thinks that between the direction and the performance, you can have some music going, but you shouldn't have the music telling the story. For example, when you hear like big dramatic music happening, it's kind of telling you this is how you should feel in this moment. Whereas if the movie's made well enough, it should tell you that without the music telling you that story. But in this, he's like, with animation, and he said this for all the animated movies, he said we have to kind of make up for some of the things that we're lacking with in live action. So the music has to kind of be this extra strong player in the movie. I thought that was really interesting. I never had thought of that or heard that from Bruce Timm or anyone about animated movies. So I thought that was cool. But he said with this, like, he loved being able to play around with the 70s of it all and the disco and stuff like that. He threw it into the action scenes, but he also didn't want too much over the top, like disco the whole time, just like bounce, bounce, like the entire time, that kind of stuff. So he said that like little stuff that you'd hear in 70s TV and movies, like the triangle, like just little weird shit that you would hear and it felt so much like, especially the opening scene, I really noticed the subtle aspects of the 70s music with the cold opening with Richard Dragon, which we're going to get to in a minute. And man, I was like, this just felt, everything about it felt like old 70s TV, especially that part felt like more like spy TV. God, this movie, I am so obsessed. But yeah, the clothes, I mean, it goes all the way. Bruce Timm said, and also one of the featurettes, that, again, it's an elseworld. So he said he thinks of this as like its own universe of 70s Batman, which is just so damn cool. Like, this isn't a prequel to the animated series. This isn't any kind of, connection to the DCAU or whatever. It's just its own universe, which, how just an amazing idea. The Tarantino of it all, because he did a lot of blaxploitation stuff and kung fu movies. So you got Kill Bill, which has like the 70s kung fu, but then you have Jackie Brown, and you have Pulp Fiction, which has a lot of that kind of blaxploitation feel. Pam Grier was one of the, and we're going to talk once again about the featurettes at the end here, but Pam Grier was one of the icons of blaxploitation of the 70s. So these were essentially black superheroes that were coming up when, kind of a bit post Black Power, but maybe also at the height of it, depending on kind of where you were with that in history. and like the big afros are kind of just fighting the man and fighting back against what was obviously very dark, several hundred years of American history. So to see that brought out through the eyes of Ben Turner / Bron Steiger in this, holy shit. I mean, what's cool about this, I think I mentioned before about how Mortal Kombat is like, it kind of stole characters from older films. Like, I didn't know Big Trouble until I think that was 86 that movie came out, or 86, 84, whatever it was. I was born in 85. I wouldn't have known that movie unless Mortal Kombat had kind of like connected that for me, right? Then it was Kill Bill for the 70s and Tarantino for the 70s for me. Obviously 70s isn't nostalgic for me, but a lot of those Tarantino flicks came out 90s, 2000s when I was growing up. So I have like nostalgia for the 70s, even though it's not. I have nostalgia for a 70s remix. So just all this shit felt so 70s. And then also, I've talked about this many times on the podcast and stuff, that when I was growing up, when the FX channel first came out, I think 1994, 1995, it was all classic television. It was kind of like a 24-hour Nick at Night. So it was like a cable Nick at Night. At that point, I think, Nick at Night was still part of Nickelodeon. It was like literally Nick at Night, for those who are old enough to remember that. So the old shit only came on after the kids stuff. Whereas I think at some point then it became its own channel. I think TV Land too at some point. But when FX first came out, before it was original stuff, it was just kind of Fox's cable channel that played all old stuff. So I had this like education of all this vintage TV. That's where I caught up on, the Batman 66, speaking of Batman, and like just all this old shows. So back to, the 70s of it all, I watched shows like even stuff that had nothing to do with action, like The Ghost of Mrs. Muir and, Family Affair, just these weird old shows that a 9-year-old in 1995 had no business watching. But I was just fascinated with vintage television. So I do have a lot of 70s nostalgia, even though I'm in no way a child of the 70s. I'm telling you, this movie is pure 70s. So I really appreciated that about it. So let's get to some of the characters. Obviously, once again, it's a Batman movie. Actually, let's check out chat. Anybody? That's all right. So way more Bruce than Batman, which I thought was a bold thing. Like Bruce Timm talked about how for him, he's like, honestly, the hardest part of this movie was trying to fit Batman into it. Meaning he wanted so bad to just make a 70s DC movie that what was more challenging for him was fitting Batman into it. And when I say fitting Batman into it, and why he says that is because he didn't mention this, but this is a fact that the DC animated movies that come out, unless they have Batman or Justice League in the title, they tend not to sell. So you have the early DCAMs, like in the 2010 era, they did, Green Lantern, Emerald Knights, they did First Flight. So those are the GL movies. They did a Wonder Woman solo, and unless it had, and Superman's the other character. But they noticed, so they stopped making those solo movies of the let's say less popular DC characters beside your Batman, your Superman, and Justice League. So without it having Batman, Superman, or Justice League in the title, sales are not good. So that's why you have things like, like the Justice League versus Teen Titans movie, which is really a Teen Titans movie, but because it won't sell without JL, so you get the point. They kind of had to shoehorn Batman into this, but it's cool because of that. Right, so this is where like limitation breeds creativity. He has this production limitation, this being Bruce Timm, of like, I got to put Batman in this movie. Dude loves Batman. It's not hard for Bruce Timm to love Batman, but it's cool that because of that, he's like, all right, well, for that reason, let me just have as much kind of this be an origin / Bruce Wayne and Kung Fu DC movie than it is a Batman movie. So the point is, it's like way more Bruce than Batman. And this is funny for me personally, because I love criticizing Batman movies and other superhero movies I hate on them for, it's like, when is this freaking person going to be in the suit? Didn't care in this movie. Like, I noticed that Batman wasn't in the suit, but there's so much action beside that. And the it's an ensemble movie. And really, we're going to get to characters like, I guess we already started, but I should say we're going to get to Richard Dragon in a minute. But if you really had to pick like whose movie it is, it's Richard Dragon's movie. Like besides just the cold opening that I mentioned before, you know, it's, and up to the very end, again, this is a spoiler, it's the literal soul of the dragon comes out of Richard Dragon, who is then able to fight the ultimate evil, brought through this, you know, portal that the Cobra, of course, is trying to harness and exploit and stuff. So, you know, it's really Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighters movie. Batman's happens to be part of this 4-person ensemble. Now, the bat suit. Also in one of the featurettes, Bruce Timm talked about, and we got, I don't typically get, like, I have a decent amount of followers in the Batman Beyond Media Instagram. We have 3,300, I think. So it's a decent following. It's not a bad following in any way. And I thank you guys so much for following. Please follow if you don't yet. But the point is, I don't on a regular basis get, when it says N thousands of others, I got N thousands of others almost overnight on the pic that I posted of Batman in the bat suit from Soul of the Dragon. The background of it is from the very end when they're like through the hell portal, and it's just Batman standing there. And I took it from the, if you have, so here's a tip, if you have the digital version of this, and if you have the Blu-ray or the digital, you should have this on Movies Anywhere. So with that digital code, you can go on what's called moviesanywhere.com, and it takes, what's great about Movies Anywhere, all of your digital movies, whether it's Amazon, you know, Vudu, wherever you buy your digital shit, it will connect all of the movies into one. So it's literally Movies Anywhere. You can log into it anywhere. And with that, you can find the special, what's called the gallery, and all the DCAMs have them. It's so cool. I didn't discover it until recently. So highly recommend, check out the galleries, because they're these gorgeous high-res pictures, high-res stills of your favorite DCAMs. In this case, of course, once again, Batman in the suit. This suit was like, I almost cried when I saw it, man. I mean, you got the high up ears, the flared out high ears of the 39 suit. So Bruce Timm said that there was a lot that went into the formation of this bat suit that also fit into kind of the overall philosophy of this movie, which was like dark 70s, dark meaning like Batman is supposed to scare the shit out of the bad guys. Like in his words, Bruce Timm said he wanted the bad guys to wet themselves when they saw him, right? So like, and you see that the few times that Batman does have the suit on in this movie, one of them being the end when he approaches Jeffrey Burr, the main Cobra guy, like the dude is terrified. And when he fights the guys in the beginning of it, which like every aspect of a Batman fight that I ever want to see is happen in that first sequence of like, you kind of don't know where he is. It's a bit from the POV of a criminal. Lights go out. You hear the lights go out, just that, like as if any lights ever made that noise. Lights go out, and then Batman just starts taking people out from left to right. You almost, again, barely see him, but he's using all his gadgets, super quick, almost supernatural, flares out the cape. I mean, all of it was there. So back to the suit. A couple aspects of this I just absolutely love with Bruce Timm's formation of it. He said he modeled it after he said he really liked what Batman versus TMNT did, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Oh, and back to the vehicles real quick. That was why I said, remember I said like I criticize a lot of the DCAMs for not being good with vehicles. I'll just do this very quickly here. I say that because I know they can do better, because I don't know if it was a co-production of Nickelodeon or whatever, which what Batman versus TMNT was. The vehicles were like flawless in that movie. Like it was seamless with the rest of the animation. So I don't know why they did such a good job with it, but they did. So I know they can do better. So that's also why I criticize this movie. If it happened every time, it'd feel like beating a dead horse, but I know they can do better. So yeah, he said he really liked what they did with the high ears and stuff. And I was like, oh man, that's a very like 70s/80s Batman, which fits with Turtles. It's an 80s character. So for Soul of the Dragon, he's like, I took a bit of inspiration from that in terms of the high ears, and then also doing like a vintage suit. But again, I wanted people to be scared. So if you look at 70s Batman though, like pure 70s Batman, the Neil Adams Batman, the Denny O'Neil Batman, but you know, the artist Neil Adams was blue and high ears. So he said, like, at first he goes, all right, let's put him in a blue suit and see how that looks. He's like, when they did that, though, it looked good, but he also, this dude's been animating Batman for 30 plus years now, or going on 30 years. Probably would be 30 years now. Yeah. Like if he started in 91. Point is, it, like, he said if that was this, if they had taken the blue that the character designers of this movie had done and put it into animation, you know, he's been doing this long enough to know that it would have ended up looking a bit like Super Friends. So he's like, we can't do that. And I want this Batman once again to scare the shit out of people. So he's like, do it black, but give him the yellow oval, the classic yellow oval. And then he said he also liked, I forget the name of the artist, but he said there was an artist during the New 52 run of DC Comics that had done this kind of throwback to the flared out, wider, but really high up 1939, like Bob Kane ears, depending on who you ask, Bill Finger. But yeah, the 1939 Detective 27 Batman, whose suit I've always loved. And, you know, ironically for Batman Beyond, he's got the high up ears, and that they're not as flared out like they are in 39, but it's the high up ears. He's got like the yellow, the circle belt. Like a lot of the Beyond suit is interestingly throwback to the, you know, because you have this, I say ironic because it's the future Batman, of course, going all the way back to 39, which is funny. Oh man, so the bat suit I absolutely adored. I also love the 70s bat penthouse with the reel-to-reel recorders and the dopest damn pad I've ever seen of the 70s. Like, this place is so pimp. It's so damn 70s. I'm obsessed with mid-century stuff, as you can tell, anywhere from 50s to the 70s. And like, I'm looking at buying houses now, and that's one of the things I'm doing. And like, I have already started looking at like ranch houses, atomic style. I just absolutely love that whole era, that whole aesthetic of like 50s to 70s. And so this place is so damn 70s. So I love that, like, he doesn't have a bat cave. Alfred's not in this. Like, there's a lot to it where you're like, how do you not have a bat cave? How? But it like, you don't even care, man, because of this dope ass 70s bat penthouse. And then, you know, when it opens up to reveal like all his gadgets and shit, the 70s reel-to-reel recorders, all situated. This penthouse is situated in the Gotham Knights, his like disco dynamo nightclub that he has bugged to listen in on Gotham's organized crime. So Richard Dragon comes to the penthouse, you know, it opens up the like the, you know, as Bruce Wayne often does, his library opens up to some secret thing. And he's got monitors, and it's all 70s looking video of these, you know, dudes sitting at tables in the nightclub, and it's his way of monitoring organized crime. So damn brilliant. I mean, just loved it so much. So let's get to our ensemble of characters. We talked about Bruce Wayne / Batman. Again, this is a Kung Fu origin story, but a lot of stuff that you don't typically get in Batman, or I should say stuff that you typically get in, especially a Batman origin story, you don't get in this, which is like, how? But then you don't care because it's so well done. So there's a mention of his parents, and we're going to get specifically to that mention in two things coming up, but without a flashback. Like, I always say that every Batman movie, while it may not be good to always do like full scenes of origin, I think that every Batman movie should at least have a flashback. Didn't care in this because it's also like you had mentioned it, so it's kind of the same thing as flashing it back. But it's cool. How many freaking flashbacks have we gotten of the Waynes getting killed in the alley, blah, blah, blah. So his Kung Fu origins, focusing on that, the mention of his parents without doing a flashback, and then also Silver St. Cloud, which was cool because that is a like classic 70s girlfriend of Batman Bruce Wayne, love interest of Bruce Wayne. But it's cool that she only has a short part right before he meets Richard Dragon in the penthouse at Gotham Knights. And they have that, you know, classic Batman moment of, look, there's something about me I can't, she says, there's something about you I know you're not telling me. So he doesn't want to lie to her, but he can't tell her, obviously, of his secret identity. So he's like, you're right. Like, I can't tell you about this other secret side of me, but I can tell you, like, I do love you. And it's emotional. You know, it's really well done for this dopey 70s Batman movie. But once again, it's perfect for an origin story because it reinforces the fact that like it's a very Batman Beyond problem, right? Like old Bruce never is essentially happy when it comes to settling down, right? We see in I don't need to go into it, but like Out of the Past, for example, that episode, we see a lot of that going on of this dude looking back on his life and going like, I put crime, I put the mission before I ever put my own happiness and being with someone I love. So that was cool to extra kind of forge that in his origin. You know, relationships can kind of weaken heroes a bit. It gives them a vulnerability. It gives them a reason to kind of think twice before jumping into action. It's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of the Dark Knight trilogy, because this dude is pining over a woman the whole time, where it's like, at least my Batman is not crying over a girl for 8 years, and let's not get into that. But I still love the Dark Knight trilogy. I do love when Batman puts that aside, and that's cool. So Ben Turner, Bronze Tiger as a teacher. This, and it's like, I mean, first of all, let's get into the kick-ass stuff. It's a kung fu movie, right? So beats the ever-living shit out of Bruce Wayne when they're training in Nanda Parbat, which Nanda Parbat is like the classic 70s Denny O'Neil kung fu kind of origins of Batman. The reason that we know that we have these kung fu origins is all thanks to Denny O'Neil, and we're going to talk about Denny O'Neil at the end. But like one of the but when they're in Nanda Parbat, it was so cool to see Batman getting his ass kicked, because again, this is an origin, and like we saw in Begins, like dude's getting his ass kicked. He's not gonna start off. This is how you form a hero, right? It's not the dude that does, especially a guy who doesn't have superpowers. He's a character of will. He's a hero of will, right? Whereas a lot of superheroes, they get bitten by a radioactive spider, they fall into a vat of whatever. This dude is just a dude who happens to be a super genius, of course, but like no physical superpowers, let's say. So he's got to will this into action. The only way to do that is to train in some way, and that means getting the ever-living shit beaten out of you. Old school. And Ben Turner is one of those dudes, man. It is like, so Michael Jai White, who does the voice of him, he, in one of the special features, said that like, it's funny I got cast for this. He's like, Ben Turner, anger problems. Ben Turner used his anger, Ben Turner from the wrong side of the tracks. Ben Turner did martial arts training to help with his anger. Sound familiar? Like, so apparently that was like Michael J. White's origin as a person. So really identified with Bronze Tiger. And I believe he played Bronze Tiger in Ben Turner Bronze Tiger in one of the Arrow shows or something. I don't really watch those shows anymore, but so it wasn't like his premiere, let's say, but I mean, this is way better from what I heard, and it's 70s Bronze Tiger. You can't get better than that. But this is also, this goes back to the, again, 70s Kung Fu comics. That is where Bruce Wayne met a lot of these people, is Nanda Parbat in the comics, where it's, like I said, Shiva, don't quote me on this, but that it shows like in the special features training of that, and I'm pretty sure in the comics that's where he met Ben Turner, Lady Shiva, and others. They also train there with him, or if not concurrent, they also train there. You got to be careful with the comics, kids. Don't jump to conclusions. Comics people jump down your throats, as they should. It's history. But yeah, I mean, Ben Turner, just seeing him when he's training, like, has these serious anger problems, and then when you see him as Bronze Tiger, you can tell he's really controlled them. But what's cool is that, like, you could see that not only was it his own kung fu training that helped him control these things, another black kid in the hood, and you know his training place is in the hood, and this kid's like, I'm not strong enough to fight or whatever. He's like, who's telling you you're not strong enough? Like, and the kid's like, I don't know. You are. Like, you're the one telling you that. You got to just be more confident, whatever. Like, get back in there and fight. I mean, it's just this really touching scene, especially for, you know, Michael J. White included. It's, you know, not a pretty childhood growing up in any hood anywhere, black or white, whatever. It's like, and Gotham City of all things. I mean, you know, dark the hood of Gotham City must be. So, like, it's really cool to see the way that Bruce uses his training, and we're going to get deeper into this in a second, that someone with, you couldn't have a more polar opposite background, which is great writing ensemble wise, writing tip of like having totally different characters together. So you have the rich billionaire playboy white kid from the Palisades, Bruce Wayne, teaming up with, you know, a kid from the hood with no privileges. But the thing that brings them together is this. And then, of course, Lady Shiva, the crime lord, Richard Dragon, a kung fu fighter himself, all coming together for this common cause to fight evil and crime. Just absolutely perfect. So Ben Turner, they could not have done a better job with it. I also loved, like, you know, he turns out to then be the key to the whole Cobra story, like deciding not to kill young Jeffrey Burr when he had the chance to. Once again, Jeffrey Burr is like the head of the Cobra organization and the heir to this weird Cobra cult. And in this one, it looks like he had like slit eyes, like it's almost like a biological weird occult thing, like occult thing. But yeah, he had the chance to kill Jeffrey Burr, goes in this world traveling thing. And like you see the plane jump over like in Indiana Jones, which is a throwback to way old movies, like the old serials and shit. Felt so damn 70s. And you see him, you know, with like that hyper 70s Kung Fu profile background of like the bright yellow or the bright red. And then him just doing all these roundhouse kicks. And then you hear the origin of his name. Because then you start to see he's got the fist. I don't even know what you call those, but you see him in Enter the Dragon, the Bruce Lee thing, and they're the claws. Sorry, like the tiger claws. And so they're like, "Yeah, what did they call you?" He's like, "Yeah, I developed a bit of a reputation when I was on this world traveling, mission to kill the head of this organization." Until he finds out it's a kid. But they're like, "Yeah, what did they call you again?" He's like, "Bronze Tiger," and everyone's like, Nice. I like that name. And it's almost this meta, like Guardians of the Galaxy moment, because again, it's almost this strangely, ironically realistic, even though it's 70s and ridiculous and whatever. It's less of a superhero movie and more of a kung fu action, spy movie. So it's just a lot of fun to see them like kind of make fun of themselves. And then also going back to the Batsuit, like when Richard Dragon first sees Batman, and when we all see Batman first come out with the suit, he's like, "What the hell was that back there?" And he's like, "What?" And he goes, "The suit, like the mask. What is all that?" And he's like, "It's a way of separating my life, separating my personal life with what I do at night." And he's like, "Yeah, but you were scaring the shit out of these people. Like, what is all that?" Which I also thought too is a great theme of this movie. We're going to talk about themes after this, and then we are out of here. We're going to talk about themes and then and then some of the special features real quick after that, and then we are out. But yeah, like I did love that Richard Dragon it gives us the exposition of like, this Batman's scary, this Batman's brutal, this Batman, and it's not like the bone breaking of like Frank Miller or anything, although there probably is some bone breaking in this, I guess, but it just didn't feel as brutal. Still like scary Batman, and it was cool to see that, like everyone's like, well, who is the Batman guy? Like, what is this era of Batman? It's cool that he's kind of not impressing these other three people because they're just as good at fighting, if not better. And Batman's scared of them. And, they're all equals is the point, which then ties into another theme that we're going to get to in a minute about the importance of them working together. But yeah, so again, Ben Turner turns out to be key because he could have killed Jeffrey Burr, but didn't. And then Jeffrey Burr then grows up. So we see flashbacks of him kind of becoming Bronze Tiger through that mission of going after the head of the family, finds out he's a kid, doesn't do it. So then they need to fight Jeffrey Burr because Jeffrey Burr, along with the Cobra Gang, has harnessed the same gateway to essentially the netherworld, the nether realm, which Mortal Kombat shout out, and Jeremy Adams, the writer of that movie, which we first see in the flashback of when they call it the Gate, which is again to this like dark, Asian mystic nether realm of pure fucking evil. And this big Cobra thing comes out, and it's not Cobra with a K like the the evil organization of the Batman stuff. But it's like a literal physical Cobra, and all these snake things come out, demons. I mean, it's really dark, weird, mystical, evil stuff, and horror, straight up horror. But we see that gate unlocked with Osensei sacrificing himself because he's like, it takes one person to open it, but another to close it, something like that. Meaning one person has to sacrifice themselves, their soul of the dragon, to close it, right? So I'm not crying. I just had to. I probably will in a minute, though. And so it's really cool that they make the gate part of the overall, the current story of it, because a lot of it is in flashback of their origins. The current story is them like, oh shit, Cobra's gotten a hold of the gate. And so Jeffrey Burr is trying to harness this evil and reopen the gate. So that's their new mission, is to stop this from happening. And so when Bronze Tiger, or when Ben Turner tells the story, to the rest of the ensemble, you then, once again, like, it's a very juxtaposed and very mixed, creatively written ensemble, then juxtaposed with Shiva as a cold-blooded, straight-up crime lord. She goes, if I had the chance to kill Hitler, I would have thrown his bassinet into a volcano, which I thought was such a good line. Like, if you could kill, that's always like a big history what if / morality experiment. Obviously, killing kids is like the worst thing you could ever do. If you could kill baby Hitler, not defending it, I'm just saying that's the big controversy there. So it's funny that she said that, threw that classic one in there. But again, I mean, she is a straight up cold-blooded killing crime lord. She's introduced as such. She's introduced as the head of I love how there's a Chinatown of Gotham. And that, of course, the Big Trouble Little China stuff. Oh, I'm such a hoe for this. But yeah, she's like the head of the Chinatown crime families and shit. And, just so good how you have her juxtaposed. Oh, so sorry. I love how Bruce is afraid of her. So when they first discover her, and so everybody's got to team up again to fight this ancient evil. And so it's like a road movie a bit, in a way, of like Richard Dragon first, discovers some of the mysterious stuff that's going on and figures out that Cobra's involved. Then he finds Bruce. Then they find Ben Turner in the hood of Gotham, and then they find Shiva, and then they all go on their adventure. So when they get to Shiva, though, or maybe Shiva was first, I don't remember, but it's funny when they get to Shiva and Richard Dragon's like, so why haven't you brought your Halloween costume over here, or something like that, about his Halloween costume, and tried to shut down Shiva. And he's like, I'm working up the nerve to it. Like, he's scared of Shiva, which is cool, because Batman might not be scared of people so much once he becomes fully formed Batman. And that people criticize this movie, and I'm like, I kind of think you're missing the point. Like, it's not really a fair criticism, because that's the point, is that he's not, old enough. He's literally old enough and he's not a fully formed Batman yet. So it's cool that he's literally scared of Shiva, and she is, again, just a cold-blooded, straight up ninja in this. Just so damn badass. And then Richard Dragon. So again, it's Richard Dragon as Bruce Lee, James Bond. So Richard Dragon, I love, first of all, how they made him Asian as opposed to the blonde pretty boy from the comics, as it was popular to do in the 70s and before that. Mark Bernard on Batman Beyond joked, he's like, yeah, it's a pretty common thing for, I think, what's called Iron Fist, same thing, of Marvel, of course, but still, it's like rich white guy goes to the East and then comes back the best fighter in the world, but there's never Asian people as the best fighters in the world. So it's cool that Richard Dragon, Shiva, Shiva in many of the comics are in many DC comics, she's considered the best fighter in the world. And in this case, it's like, just make him Asian. Like, why the hell would he not be? But it's cool. It's like, that's very much their Bruce Lee character. He wears the Bruce Lee gi at the end, straight out of, Enter the Dragon or pick your Bruce Lee movie. So I just thought that was a really cool touch. David Carrasco's performance was perfect. All the people, I don't know if we've gotten into the voice performance yet, but all stellar across the board. They were just funny enough, just serious enough. And again, it's really Richard Dragon's movie. Back to the Bruce Lee James Bond thing. I already talked about how it's kind of Richard Dragon's movie. And then, we're out of here in 10 more minutes. So yeah, it's like that Bond cold opening, James Bond cold opening was just like, I used to be a big Bond kid. Like I said, I don't know why I was so into like 70s and 60s stuff as a kid, but I have nostalgia of these 60s and 70s Bond movies, and I was so into Bond as a kid, and just it felt so damn James Bond to have it right in the beginning of the movie, you know, jumping out, drawing a parachute after an explosion, just all the shit. Watch the movie if you haven't yet, and it's like I just that, and then he lands on the boat, Dragon, Richard Dragon, and of course the boat has like 3 hot girls on it in bikinis. It doesn't get better than that in terms of film, man. Just so damn good. But the whole movie played very much, once again, more of like a Kung Fu secret agent movie than it does a like DC superhero movie, which was just so awesome. And then once again, it's really Richard Dragon's movie if you had to choose the main character. I mean, he's there when they're training in Nanda Parbat. He's kind of the most level-headed out of all of them, definitely. Like Bruce has all his trauma and all his, you know, we all know how insane and troubled the guy is. As smart as he is, he's very troubled emotionally. Shiva, as we keep saying, is like, as incredible as she is as a fighter, she's really cold-blooded and cold and calculated, not as human, let's say. And then Bronze Tiger is just all that anger and shit. All good people at heart, but Richard Dragon's the most kind of level-headed. And fun fact, 1976 is both when Lady Shiva was introduced in the comics. She was introduced in Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter. Of course, those comics were, and a lot of like 70s Batman Kung Fu origins that we've talked about this whole episode. Again, Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, but they were coming off the Kung Fu craze at the time in the 70s. You know, these Kung Fu movies were huge. The Shaw Brothers, once again, Bruce Lee, stuff like that. And, you know, so the comics were reflecting that. So you get Richard Dragon, Kung Fu Fighter. And then Cobra was actually introduced that same year, not in Richard Dragon, I don't think. But Cobra was introduced that same year. So all this shit's just very 70s DC. So yeah, Richard Dragon, absolutely stellar in this. Then Oh Sensei, I mean, once again, man, you get James Hong to voice anything. This guy, Lopan, is my boy. Big Trouble. So he's funny. He's badass. The deliveries of some of his lines, like I said, like when any of these people need to be serious, they do it perfectly. When they need to be funny, they do it perfectly. And it's a really perfect, like, this movie is tonal perfection. Like, it's just funny enough. It's just this, and it keeps that consistency, which is not easy to do. You know, Guardians, sometimes it's a little too funny in my opinion. Thor Ragnarok, a little too funny, way too funny at parts. This just played it just right. It's like, let's take this seriously, but not, let's make it more of a film and like a 70s movie than superhero. But when we do the superhero stuff, it'll be unapologetic, but we're still going to laugh at ourselves. So good. But yeah, Oh Sensei has kind of this humorous Pai Mei. So Pai Mei is the, I think it's Pai Mei, who's the trainer in Kill Bill. So you get your classic, you know, 70s Kung Fu trainer, old dude in, you know, this mystical Nanda Parbat place in the Himalayas. And like, he was just perfect, just absolutely perfect. And we're going to talk in the themes in just a minute about him, where I think his performance was like, damn, James Hong, like, I didn't know you had that in you. Richard Burr, again, this is the head of Cobra at this point. He's the heir to this Cobra. So the Cobra organization is this big, you know, worldwide terrorist organization, but there's heirs to kind of the cult throne. And he happens to be that generation's heir. Because again, Bronze Tiger was supposed to kill him as a kid, doesn't, so he grows up to be the new heir. And as Wes Gleason, the newest, he is the voice director for like all the new DCAMs. He said he's, quote, dripping with menace. And I forget who does the voice. I didn't write it down, but Richard Burr was perfect in this. And this is where this movie gets like way more of a film, and definitely why it's R-rated, is that it is pure horror in some of these parts. Like, horror adult scenes, the cult / 70s serial killer vibes, where like we're introduced to this dude where he captures a woman, and, you know, the whole like post-coital killing women. It's a very 70s serial killer / occult, which we're going to talk about at the very end here. Bruce Timm said he really wanted to bring some of that in there. I'm not making that up there. But yeah, really creepy scenes. Like he's going to eat a mouse. He eats that mouse while watching this woman, get attacked by cobras. Like really sick shit. Where you're like, wow, this movie's going there. So pure evil, which I think is good to like step up as a Batman villain. A lot of Batman villains, you're like, I can sympathize with this guy. Not this motherfucker. Like this dude, like he is, going straight to hell. He's from hell, essentially. Pure evil. So I thought, and because like this is once again this like Asian mysticism, and you have this nether realm and all this dark sorcery and shit, I thought it was really good to have him just be pure evil. And why you would need this just ridiculous ensemble to shut him down, man. All right, so let's get into some of the themes. As a writer, we got to talk about themes, and for any review, you should get into the themes. Big one is, you guys are better together than apart. I'm going to get emotional in a minute, but I'll try to get through this. So you're better together than apart. Oh Sensei instills this in this crew of the ensemble that we see, because it's kind of all of their origins going back to Kung Fu stuff. But he really instills that in them, and it ties in with, another theme. Life isn't meant to be lived alone. Big Batman Beyond problem. We talk about this all the time on the show, that like Bruce, the big distinction between Terry and Bruce, and not to get only into Beyond, but keeping it with Bruce, is that Bruce, did have this chance his whole life to be happy, but never took it, right? So reflects on that, has a lot of regrets and stuff, and is essentially unhappy his whole life because of that, because he put the mission first, right? And not to say that it equates per se like, standard monogamy or whatever, but I think the idea is companionship, right? Is everyone to a certain extent needs another companion besides some dog. That at least the Bat Hound's awesome, but that's kind of not enough. Versus Terry McGinnis decides at some point, like, I do want to be happy. And that plays out in Epilogue that we talked about before from the JLU. So it is a big Bruce Wayne problem of like, look, you have to, you're not going to be happy, or life isn't meant to be lived alone. And I could probably take some of that advice. It's like, maybe you don't push away love, but you sure don't, whatever. Yeah, but I think a lot of us nerds put our interests and stuff maybe before and I'm very career oriented as well. Like, I take a lot of these themes to heart, and it's also like, wow, maybe this is why I like Batman so much. I love people. I love people. I just don't know how much I like them so much all the time. So yeah, these are lessons I'm learning as well. Justice over vengeance. That's a big one. You see a lot of, I think, the juxtaposition of Bruce, or I should say the contrast of Bruce with these other characters. Like Shiva's just all about, turns into a crime lord. She takes this training and does other shit with it, right? It kind of shows the different spectrums of what you could do with such a powerful training set, a set of skills and set of training skills. But Bruce, it's really driven home that like, justice. So this is where I might get a bit of emotional, but of course it's a Kung Fu movie, and the Kung Fu philosophy delivered by our boy Lo Pan, James Hong. I'm like, give these people awards, dude. So I'm going to read one of the lines word for word here. He says, this is the scene when Bruce and all of them are, he tells them, try to break the rock. So everyone has these rocks in front of them, and they're just pounding these rocks bare-fisted with fire under it. And I guess this is a training thing that they do with martial arts training and stuff. And so like, so here's the line. Oh, sorry. So they're all supposed to break this. And it's funny that the women are like the smartest out of everyone. And the two women, I forget the name of the other girl who's training. But Shiva's like, fuck this. I know where this is going. I'm not going to break a rock. I'm a human being. It's not going to happen. Then Richard Dragon leaves, and then Ben Turner, or no, I think Ben Turner first, and then Richard. And Ben Turner's like, look, if you turkeys want to break your hand, it's like, I'd like to not break my hand tonight, and like, screw it. Then Richard Dragon leaves, And Bruce just doesn't stop. Obsessed. He's obsessed. And man, do I understand obsession. So when I get into stuff, I really get into it. When I fall in love, I really fall in love. When I, have things that either bother me or that I am, again, really into, it's just I get obsessed, and I can really understand that. And also, like, trauma of your past, man. Like, this guy's literally just beating himself up, and he thinks that, all right, so let me get to the line here, and I'll try to get through it. So O-Sensei says, he basically just stops Bruce. He's like, you're not going to break this rock. And Bruce is like, I didn't even know you were there. He like walks out of the darkness. He's like, I didn't know you were here still. Because again, he's just by himself doing this. So he's like, look, and this is a quote, darkness is a powerful ally if you know how to befriend it. So darkness is a powerful ally if you know how to befriend it. Why can't I talk? Befriend it. And then Bruce goes, you said break the rock. And he goes, look, I said try to break the rock. I know what happened to you, to your family. And this is where I'm probably going to lose it. I know what happened to you, to your family. Now you want to stop that from happening to anyone else. But evil is as eternal as this rock. Even if you break the rock, there will be pebbles. Break the pebbles, there will be sand, and evil remains. You cannot change that no matter how much you train. Like, holy shit, dude. I know what happened to you and your family. Like, telling Bruce Wayne, like, you're not, no matter how much you train, no matter how much you beat yourself up, no matter how many of these criminals you're going to stop. And especially with the philosophy of Bruce Wayne, like, he doesn't kill. I should say Batman, most part, he doesn't kill. There's always kind of going to be crime there. There's always going to be evil, like, and you can't change that no matter how much you train. So like, oh yeah, and then especially in a city like Gotham, right? That's why he's set in Gotham. It's this impenetrably corrupt place that you're never going to truly end crime. So the fight is eternal, which I think he even says, yeah, it's as eternal as this rock, evil. So. And then he goes, and then this line goes back to the first theme we talked about. This is again from O-Sensei. Accept what you cannot change. It is not your burden to bear. Life is meant to be lived with others. It is too hard to do it alone. And I lost it. It's just like, come on, man. Telling young Bruce Wayne as he's training that life is not meant to be lived, because you know what this fucker's like future is going to be. You know how dark and sad it's going to be. You know that he never lets anyone in, right? He pushes everybody away because of the mission, and like because he never accepts what he cannot change. And we even saw him before that with Silver St. Cloud. Oh, fuck. All right, man. We talked about themes. We talked about characters. Ben cried, which is not hard to do. Finally, and then we'll be out of here. The featurette / behind the scenes stuff. So there's one featurette on here. Again, I had seen one that I talked about before, the Jim Krieg's Far Out highlights. I had seen that from the Superman Man of Tomorrow movie. It came along with that movie, which came out in August. And I'll get to that in a second. So I expected that, to be honest. And I did expect like another featurette, but I thought maybe it'd be more like behind the scenes, whatever. Didn't expect this, which was called Batman Raw Groove. And it is a fascinating, in-depth look at the history of the 70s. Excuse me. Oh, sorry, I couldn't scroll. It's a fascinating, in-depth look at the history of the 70s and the cultural and racial factors behind the different genres of film and Soul of the Dragon. So, of course, Kung Fu, but also blaxploitation, even the weird, creepy fascination of the occult and dark magic during the 70s, influencing Bruce Timm's newest version of 70s Cobra. Right? So you have in the 70s, in the 60s kind of broke open a lot of the stuff that we see in the 70s as history works. What comes before, you're seeing the aftermath. So the 70s was the aftermath of the hippie explosion of like, let's seek out other things beside this standard Judeo-Christian values that America was based on. And we're not going to get too deep into the history and stuff. I just kind of want to talk about this for a minute. But it's like, let's break away from, let's see what our parents did, like trust no one over 30, man. Like, let's look to Eastern religion and philosophy and stuff, and not knocking it. It's just like, that's what they were doing. So that's why you have like a lot of the hippie stuff is this huge fascination with Buddhism. And really before the 60s, like no one knew what the hell Buddhism was. Also, we started traveling more. You have airline, if you know your history a little bit of like tech and stuff, like airlines changed everything, because now you could fly places. You used to have to take a ship just to go to like England. You could, the world just started flying and traveling more. Immigration, just over time, America becomes more of a melting pot. And then, the rise of film, which is, I'll get emotional talking about this, of like, it really brings people together, man. Like, all you need is a camera and a microphone, and like, you can tell your story wherever you are. And then people from all over the world are seeing that, right? So it's like, all these things that factored into these different genres of film that Bruce Timm was pulling out of Soul of the Dragon. With blaxploitation, you had post-civil rights of the 60s. And before that, like I was saying with, I think I covered it with Asian stuff, but like, point is, martial arts came with that, kind of fascination to the East. Blaxploitation, I mean, you have post-civil rights, Black Power, finally Black people having a real voice in the public was really cool. That like, and a lot of the Jim Crow laws and the really bad literally institutionalized racism and, Ku Klux Klan, I mean, terrorism across domestic terrorism being, committed against Black people for decades at that point, if not a century, right? You had that stopping for a large way. So Black Power, then you have, just the 70s music and all that stuff coming up. And it was just cool to have. And so these blaxploitation films were essentially Black superheroes. You have Pam Grier, you have Black Dynamite, Black Dynamite was the, or I was going to say Shaft, but Black Dynamite was the Michael Jai White movie that I think he wrote and was also in, but very much, blaxploitation, honoring that. And then, of course, the weird, creepy fascination with the occult. So 1969, you have the Charles Manson stuff and really dark shit that was going on in the 60s. And kind of this like serial killers. There were serial killers prior to that, but the rise of the media and stuff, like, for example, the Vietnam War, just a lot of stuff began to be televised and just become public due to the technology of television and film. And also censorship started to go down, like 50s and 60s. A lot of stuff was censored like crazy. And then the 70s, they stopped censoring things for in a big way. So like, you had just all this stuff that was being revealed to the American public that was like, wow, like people are sick and there's these weird serial killers out there. And also, again, that the dark side of kind of looking to the East, not looking to the East, but just interest in other beliefs beside standard American Judeo-Christian values. Then you had people looking into like the darkness, the occult, Satanism got kind of big, and people just having very little faith in authority. So it's like fuck it, why not start a cult and be into this evil stuff? But this is specifically with this, it's like occult, OCCULT. So kind of that 70s occult stuff was a big part of the inspiration for Bruce Timm. But man, this Batman Raw Groove, it's called, again, Batman Raw Groove is the name of the featurette on the Soul of the Dragon stuff. And they had, historians from back then, all this stuff. And of course, Jeremy Adams talked about it, and Bruce Timm himself. And it was cool to see, like, they'd have a history person talk about the history stuff, and then Bruce Timm would come in and say, and yeah, that was the thing that I wanted to, bring into the movie. And then you had Jeremy Adams going like, so when Bruce Timm came to me about this is how I then fit it into Soul of the Dragon. So they do talk about Soul of the Dragon throughout, but if you're as much of a 70s nut as I am, really, really good stuff. And obviously I'm a history nerd, so fascinating shit. Then finally, Jim Krieg's Far Out highlights. So Jim Krieg is the producer of Soul of the Dragon, and between this and the newest, I think Soul of the Dragon was the first time he started doing it, not producing, but doing these featurettes where, like he does in the newest one, Justice Society, World War II. That's the next DCAM I was saying in the beginning. For that one, he does this like World War II, like he's on this old school mic, and the sound is all old school, and it's like the old 16 millimeter, I think, camera. And they did something similar with this, where it looks like it's shot on like old 70s film, and he's wearing all this 70s gear, and he's got like his pimp hat on and these big glasses. This is a much lighter and purely fun featurette, but it opens with Jim Krieg. Excuse me. So it's called Jim Krieg's Far Out Highlights. And this is where actually, yeah, again, purely fun featurette, especially coming off that Batman Raw group, which is kind of heavy shit. This one's much more about the Soul movie itself. So if you want like a more behind the scenes type thing, check this one out. Going behind the scenes with producer Jim Krieg that I just mentioned, Bruce Timm, director Sam Liu, and our boy Jeremy Adams. So our first Soul vids were based on this particular featurette, since it was, again, originally made available back in August along with the release of Superman Man of Tomorrow. So that's where I pulled all that B-roll for that for those videos. And also, like, that's where I learned that Jeremy Adams modeled, got inspiration for Big Trouble in Little China, and just, I was like, oh man, I can't wait for this movie. I know for a fact, like, I'm not trying to knock anything else that comes out for the rest of the year, but let's just say this: unless this Justice Society World War II movie like really knocks it out of the park, and I think it will. I mean, being written by Jeremy Adams, I also love the animation style. Again, we're out of this DCAMU now, so it's like, it's not that New 52 anime inspired. A lot of those character designs were by, I met this guy too, Phil Barossa. He was at the Batman Bad Blood premiere because he does a lot of the DCAMU stuff. But yeah, so like, it's not Phil Barossa style anymore. It's these thick outlines, almost like Archer, where it's like almost cell shaded even. So people are speculating, because it's in that style, it might be a prequel to Superman Man of Tomorrow, because it is a World War II story. I can't wait for Justice Society. But like, as much as I love World War II, and as much as I love Justice League stories, I'm a Batman guy. And again, 70s guy. And again, I love history. I love the blaxploitation stuff. I love Kung Fu. I love this. I said it last time. I really think I think this is going to be my favorite DCAM of the whole year, is my point. And like, it's going to beat out Justice Society as much as I think that's going to be good. And it's definitely, I think, going to beat out, wow, it's not even coming to me. Batman Long Halloween 2-parter. So that's going to be later on in the year. And like, Long Halloween's cool. And we'll wrap with this, I guess, is saying, like, I'm looking forward to all of those movies. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining we're getting a Long Halloween adaptation, but it's kind of like, shout out to my co-host here on the channel, Eli Benson. And he's like, we got a Long Halloween adaptation. It's called Dark Knight. It's like, oh, dig. But it's also, yeah, like and also, how are you going to animate the Tim Sale style? It's like a lot of the dark, negative space, and to bring out that noir feel to it. It's also like it's very much a crime story. It's like Batman v. the mob. I don't know. There's a lot of DC characters and villains and stuff in it. It's just not a story that like, and also I'm tired of adaptations altogether. I don't think that every Batman book needs an adaptation. I don't think that every Justice League book needs an adaptation. It's one of the things I love the most about this movie is that Batman Soul of the Dragon, in closing, is like, it's an original story. Takes place in the DCU. It's got all the shit that I love in movies. Airtight tone. We talked about the ensemble work. I cried about the themes. It's just so much damn stuff in there. And speaking of emotions, and we'll wrap here, the movie itself was dedicated to the great Denny O'Neil, and I would like to dedicate this episode of the DC Animation. Sorry, DC. I forgot the name of my own show. I would like to dedicate this episode of the DC Animation. Oh my God, I'm so tired. Sorry, guys. Of the DC Animated Movie Show to the great Denny O'Neil, without whom there would be no Soul of the Dragon. Like, this guy created, if you watch the credits of this, it's like, Bronze Tiger created by, like, don't quote me here, but I'm pretty sure Bronze Tiger created by Denny O'Neil, O Sensei, Denny O'Neil, Lady Shiva, like all these characters were created by Denny O'Neil. The whole world of, Soul of the Dragon, Denny O'Neil. And in closing, like, that's what Batman the Animated Series at its outset, they were like, let's do Denny O'Neil, Dark Detective. Like, Ra's al Ghul, even freaking Ra's al Ghul. Let's do that era of Batman. Let's not do cheesy, Super Friends. Let's not do 66 again. Let's really do Batman as we know, the Dark Knight Detective. So this movie is so damn Batman. It's so damn DC, but it's also such a good movie. Like, I have always said, like, I am a Bat fan for sure, but as you can tell, like, not huge into the comics compared to the animation. I'm purely an animation kid, but film between Schumacher and Batman Begins coming out, there wasn't any Batman movies, and so I was just a movie fan for years. Movies, TV, Tarantino, all that shit. You're all emo and shit when you're a young adult too. So you're like, I don't need Batman and comics and blah. And then, I was never shameful about it. I still loved it. I would still watch animated series and shit and talk about it. But this was just putting together, I couldn't imagine anything else in the world that I love not in this movie. And then even the weird, dark, occult, horror aspects of it, I thought it was adult in that way and really bold. And the fact that it looks like Batman Beyond, like in the DCAU style. Come on, baby. So that is my review of Batman Soul of the Dragon. How did I do? 126, way longer than I expected. I love how I said 10, 15 minutes before. That did not happen. I just thought by myself I'd do this a little shorter. But anyway, once again, I'm trying to find my spot here. Please subscribe here on YouTube. Click that notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. And speaking of the notification bell, click it so you know when we're live. If you do like the live episodes, for the podcast listeners, please subscribe to the pod. Just like the vid series, we are a DC animated movie show. You can find that show on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, wherever you listen to podcasts. And again, this particular episode is available in both video and audio form, so you get to pick your poison for today's show. But again, please subscribe to both. So there's plenty of YouTube stuff you're obviously not going to get on the podcast, and vice versa. Finally, follow us on Instagram. We are at DC Animated Movie Show. Follow the YouTube channel as well. We are at Batman Beyond Media. So this has been Benjamin David. Animated, we stand. How do you like that slogan?